Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 4 p.m. special City Council meeting of February 22nd, 2022. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Here.
Vice Mayor Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Arias.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
I'm here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Gray. Here. And Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you. In keeping with Council's resolution, the public statements portion is now divided into two periods. There's a period for items listed on the meeting agenda and items not listed on the meeting agenda. Statements for items listed on this afternoon's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total per agenda item. Statements regarding items not listed on the agenda are also given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, give them to the clerk, who will give copies to the council. If you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and give it to the city clerk. We ask that you mark whether you are here to speak on an item listed on tonight's agenda or on a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify the agenda item on which they wish to speak will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda portion. Those speakers will be called during the non-agenda portion of the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items listed on this afternoon's agenda?
Mayor Go, no speaker cards have been received for the agenda item public statements. We have provided a staff memorandum regarding item 2B, non-agenda item public statements, transmitting emailed correspondence received.
Thank you. And do we have any public speakers regarding items not listed on the agenda?
No, Mayor Go, we have not.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 3A, report by California Water Service regarding status of proposed rate increase.
Thank you. City Manager Clegg.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be together this afternoon. From Council request, we reached out to our partners at Cal Water and asked that they come today to share some information about the work that they're doing in general, as well as the rate case coming forward. And so our partners, Tammy Johnson, Kevin McCusker, and other folks from Cal Water will be here to present that information to you and answer any questions.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, City Council members, Honorable Mayor Go. Thank you for having us here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tammy Johnson. I'm the district manager here for Cal Water. Almost a 37-year employee of the company, 32 of those years right here in Bakersfield. Delano, born and raised, and transplant after high school. So thank you for having us. I'm going to start the first part of the presentation, then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kevin McCusker. Next slide, please. Oh, I have the clicker, don't I? Okay, give me control here. Thank you. So for those of you who have not seen a presentation by Cal Water before, I'm going to give you a quick overview of who Cal Water is. Jump into a little bit about Cal Water in Bakersfield, and then talk to you a little bit about our our proposed rate case filing. So Cal Water was formed in 1926 right here in the Central Valley, and so we have 96 years of experience under our belt running water systems throughout the state. We have service areas across California where we're serving more than 2 million Californians through 500,000 service connections. That equates to just about over 80 billion gallons of water annually, and more than 400,000 water quality tests per year. And we're pretty darn proud of our track record on water quality. So if you were going to stretch out all the miles of main that Cal Water has in place, you could go from New York to the Olympics. Olympics are over now, but you could if you wanted to. So more than 6,500 miles of water main within Cal Water's infrastructure. That's a lot of infrastructure to take care of. So in Bakersfield, we've been here since the beginning. This is one of the original water systems that Cal Water began with. Currently, we have 154 local employees. Those are all, city, county residents working for Cal Water here. They are engineers. They are people like me who started out as being customer service representatives and now are district manager. We've got 1,869 years of experience here with more than 250 professional certifications ranging from water distribution operators all the way through engineering. So, it goes without saying, we are part of this community. We're your family, we're your friends, we're your neighbors. We live here, we work here, we spend our money here. And we drink the water, more importantly. We drink the water. We drink it right from the tap. We don't use bottled water, well, sometimes, but we don't need it. We know that our water is good to drink. And our children and my grandchild and your grandchildren hopefully drink the water as well. So what does that mean as far as our service area is concerned? Within the city and Cal Water service area, we've got more than 286,000 residents that we're serving water to through 73,500 connections, 1,587 miles of main, 88 water wells. We have more storage in Bakersfield than any of our other systems throughout the state of California. And even though most people don't believe this when I tell them this fun fact, that the elevation change in Bakersfield requires us to have more storage available. It's also the way we operate our system through purchasing water through Kern County Water Agency. We also have 2 state-of-the-art surface water treatment plants. And so just, it's not just about that part of it. There's a lot more, that's built into the importance of having a well-run water system. And part of it is fire protection. We take that very, very seriously. We have to make sure that your fire departments can take care of business when needed, when they've got those emergencies. We ensure that to help meet those ISO fire protection ratings that are critical, not only to fire departments, cities, counties, but also our residents and our commercial customers to help with insurance costs. We meet or exceed all primary and secondary state and federal water quality drinking standards every day, and we stay diligent to make sure that we're ahead of the game for treatment. I'm sure you guys all remember all of our TCP projects, just to make sure that we can meet those standards. And all of this we bring to you at less than a penny per gallon. So what is the importance of why I'm in front of you today? It has to do with our infrastructure, and I'm sure that you're all aware it's in the news, maybe not as much lately, but it's in the news on how many water drinking systems are failing. And the US EPA says there's $660 billion nationwide it would take to fix all the failing drinking water infrastructures. I'm happy to say Cal Water is diligent on its infrastructure replacement, and we make sure that we can deliver that safe drinking water through all of that, through all of those mains and services, tanks. The American Society of Civil Engineers grades the U.S. drinking water infrastructure as C-. That's a result of that infrastructure need, right? And 1 in 4 Americans receives unsafe drinking water according to Natural Resources Defense Council, not in Bakersfield. So over the last decade, Cal Water has invested almost $1.25 billion statewide in infrastructure. And we believe that that's more than any other water company in the state of California. We take it seriously. So in Bakersfield, we've invested almost $150 million in the infrastructure here in the last 10 years. And in this proposed rate increase, we are proposing to invest an additional $119 million in capital improvements. Out of those $119 million, the largest percentage of that will be spent on main replacements. We've got some big projects going on. I'm happy to meet with you all individually if you're ever interested and want more information about the projects that are happening in your wards. We have that information for you. But we're going to spend $56 million in replacing mains in those 3 years. Some big projects, especially downtown on Chester. $20 million for increasing reliability throughout the system. That's pumps, meters, valves, pressure vessel replacements, and we're also developing future needed water supply, such as tanks, rehabbing wells and so forth. So we're constantly looking at what the system needs to make sure that when you turn on your tap, that you have safe drinking water come out. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. McCusker, who is going to go into a little bit more of the details of the proposed rate increase.
Thank you very much. Mayor, council members, staff, thank you very much for having us. I just want to kind of pick up where Tammy left off. My name is Kevin McCusker. I'm the manager of community affairs for California Water Service. And this type of proposal does affect customer bills. We try to minimize that the best we can. However, as proposed, this particular infrastructure improvement plan would affect customer bills to the tune of about 14 cents per day. That's year one. These are 3-year cycles. They tend to be front-loaded in year one. Years 2 and 3, which would be 2024 and 2025, would be 10 cents a day. That's based on typical customer consumption patterns. So I want to talk a little bit about the process, because that's as proposed. But there is an 18-month, sometimes longer process for how these things get vetted. And it's important to note that although the topic of rate setting can be arcane, it is transparent. People can participate. So the rates are not set by Cal Water. We make a proposal. And the California Public Utilities Commission eventually comes to a conclusion about what the rates should be based on the required revenue to operate the system. They look through all of our infrastructure proposals, as well as all of our other operating costs. In addition to commission staff and the commissioners themselves, there is an independent body called the California Public Advocates Office, whose sole role is to kind of play adversary to the utilities. And they also, as a watchdog agency, are deeply, deeply involved in the process, as one might imagine. The Public Advocates' mission, as mandated, is to, quote, obtain the lowest possible rate for service consistent with reliable and safe service levels. And I think it's really important to note that that's our goal too. So parties can come at this from different viewpoints and different perspectives, but the goal is the same. So although we can have differences of opinions, we all want safe and reliable water service, and we want to be able to maintain that safety and that reliability in a manner that's affordable. We can have disagreements on the best way to do that, but that is everybody's goal. Other parties also can and do get involved. The city of Bakersfield itself is a party to this proceeding. Other cities get involved. Individual customers can get involved. It is an open process. It's not an easy process to navigate, but it is open. It is transparent for those who want to participate. And again, I think it's really important to to highlight the idea that everybody involved wants safe water, they want reliable water service, and they want it at an affordable cost. And we're all working towards that goal together, even if we have different opinions at times about what is necessary to preserve safety, what is necessary to preserve reliability, and what constitutes affordability. Everybody in the end wants to preserve that affordability for our customers. And we're right now in the process. We have a public participation hearing coming up in Bakersfield. It'll be in April 18th. I shouldn't say in Bakersfield, I'm sorry. Forget about the new paradigm in which we live. Unfortunately, we requested in-person PPHs. It will be virtual. We had one in the last rate cycle, which was 2018. We had one here in this very chamber. This particular time, the commission is having all the PPHs virtual. The downside of that means it's not a Bakersfield specific one. You'll be sharing that PPH with some other service areas. But not only can the city participate in the PPH, any customer, all customers have to be notified about their ability to participate, and they all can and do provide testimony to the commission about their opinion about what is affordable and what type of investment is necessary in order to keep the water service safe and reliable. And that'll be April 18th, 5:30. And we will be emailing you details on participation that you can share with your constituents as well as participate yourselves if you so choose. That is really all we had prepped for today, and figured that you would probably have some questions for us.
Thank you, Mr. McCusker. Ms. Johnson, colleagues, do you have any questions? Councilmember Gray.
No, I just have a comment. You know, safe drinking water is something that we just take for granted. I mean, I never think about it when I'm going to turn the spigot on. So to say that only one out of every 4 people do not drink safe water, that's pretty scary. So I just ran the numbers real quick, and at $4.25 a month with your proposed raise, I think that's a pretty good deal. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. As I look around the room, the last time that we all met, I think Mr. McCusker was here, but that was it. We had Greg back here then.
Greg wanted to participate, and when we spoke in yesterday, I tried to see if there was a way for him to Zoom or call in. He really wanted to be available to answer any particular questions about rate setting. That's really kind of his purview, but he certainly would be available for any follow-up calls or Zooms that you want to do, or in person.
All right, thank you. 2018 was your last rate increase?
That was the last filing, yes.
Did you come before the council after you submitted your filing?
We did. We presented to you in that rate cycle. There was significant delays in the way that case unfolded, some of which were beyond anybody's concern. It was a public health crisis as well. And at one point, the new proposed rates, had that case closed on time, would have taken effect in January of 2020. The case was delayed. There was no decision at that point. When the pandemic struck, there was a lot of speculation. It was the very early days of it, about what type of financial outfall individual people and businesses could suffer as a result of the public health crisis. And at that point, we went to the commission and asked them to put a moratorium on any rate changes until that became more clear. And so those actual rates didn't take effect until January of 21.
I don't have my notes in front of me, so can you tell me what the rate increases are per year?
Yeah, it's as proposed, because the decision's still pending. It's roughly $4.90, somewhere in there, I believe, and I'll get
percentage-wise.
So in 418, sorry. So as proposed, current typical bill, I would, this is a formulaic. I have the actual billed amounts, but it's about 4602 currently. That would go up by 418. That's a 9.1% increase. that is based on typical customer consumptive behavior. So everybody's individual bill could change, could be different. But if you are on a 5/8 meter with a typical consumption behavior, it would be 418, that's a 9.1%. Year 2 would be 298, 5.9%. And year 3 would be 289, that's 5.4.
Okay, so that's, let's just say it's 20% over the 3 years.
Spread over.
And that includes compounding? Because the first one's going in, then it's going to be compounded with the second one and compounded with the third.
That is true, yes.
Okay.
The rates don't drop off year by year. They drop off at the end of the depreciation and the usable life of the infrastructure.
I have no doubt that you guys do a great job and provide a great service, and I appreciate all that. But when I first saw this, I just kind of glanced at what my water bills had been, and I want to thank you because one time we had a catastrophe, and you helped me with that, and I really appreciate that. But over 3 years with the compounding, my water bill would have gone up about $850 by the end of that 3-year period. So while you're doing a good job and stuff, I think this is quite a request. And it is going to impact people. And can you tell me too, if you don't know it off the top of your head, that's fine, but are we decreasing our flat water rates?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we are actively converting those metered customers, flat rate customers to metered services, and we have a scheduled completion date for the end of 2024. So there is some money in this budget to finish that program off, and at the end of 2024, we will be completely 100% metered for residential services.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback on that for 1 second?
Sure.
I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that we had a much more aggressive schedule proposed that we lost in a previous rate case. And if that had gone through, the conversion would be done by now.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you both for the presentation today. I remember when you visited us in 2018 and presented to us then. It seems to me, though, that part of the rationale was some capital improvement projects then as well. So I'm curious to hear from you what have been the outcomes. What are those improvements that we've been able to realize as ratepayers in the city of Bakersfield since the last time we discussed a rate increase?
So I would say that a lot of the capital projects that we've been working on are similar to what we have proposed as well, although different infrastructure. I have my general superintendent and my assistant district manager in the audience, and I'm sure they would be happy to talk to you about maybe a couple of projects that were completed in this last rate case. Would that suffice an answer, or are you more interested in very specific details?
Maybe outside of this meeting, if you
Okay.
can present the full council an update on what capital projects have been completed as a result of the last rate increase, and then also what is to come. And so it feels like, it could feel like to members of the public and certainly many of us ratepayers that there's this continuous ask, right? More, more, more. How much more? What is the ultimate plan for improvements of the entire system? What's the longer term objective, and how do we know that we get there? So it's not this continuous ask. And along with that, I had a question about, I understand the rate increase was delayed until January 2021. And I appreciate you having the thoughtfulness given the global health crisis. The reality is, though, that the effects of the global pandemic are still very real to many many people in our community and all over, especially the economic effects. And we see the rise in inflation. So I'm interested to hearing from you your best case as to why now this is essential, given the economic condition and given the real impacts that people are facing today.
So the cycle itself happens in those 3-year increments. So we are mandated to come to the commission every 3 years. So they set the cycle, and we present them with all of our expenses, including capital projects. We tend to focus on capital projects in these presentations for 2 reasons. One, because that is the most tangible benefit that people can understand for unseen infrastructure and a topic that's fairly inside baseball for a lot of people. And 2, because in many cases, the infrastructure needs in those projects, those capital projects, are the biggest contributor to the bill itself as well as the increase. So what we try to do, and if I can scroll back here, is we try to go through in a systematic way, looking at the infrastructure needs and the improvements. But Bakersfield is a large service district. We've got almost 74,000 service connections. We've got over 1,500 miles of main. New main needs to come in. When main can live and be useful anywhere from 50 years to 75 years to even 100 years. But when you look at the leak history, when you look at what would happen if that main failed, so when we're scoring mains for replacement, let's say you have 2 equal mains. They're both 75 years old, and they both have had 10 leaks in the past 15 years. But one main is feeding a dialysis center, and the other main is not. The main that is going to cause a more consequential outcome should there be a failure is going to be graded higher in need for turnout. But we can't turn over all the main at once, which is why it has to be kind of laid out on this continual cycle of phasing it in and phasing it out in as judicious a manner as we can. And it's a complicated process, and it's one that we're actually working on a new pilot project that would make it a little more public on the long-term scale. Obviously, the cycle is every 3 years, but our planning happens in 9, 15-year cycles. And we're trying to find a way to provide people with more of a window of how that's going to go. So as far as closed projects, I do have a spreadsheet of closed projects, and I can send that to the council.
I would love to see it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna add one quick thing, and when you asked that question, I asked myself, can the water stop flowing? And it can't. It has to be there. You can't stop the age of the infrastructure, and so you have to make sure that you're continually maintaining it and then replacing it when you absolutely have to. We had a catastrophic leak downtown last year that put a huge risk out there for not only your constituents, but for us, Cal Water, as well. And we had to reassess and say, you know what, that main's got to go. We've got to get it out of the ground and get a new one in there. It was almost 100 years old. It's got to go. And so sometimes, we budget for the work, but sometimes it has to change if something moves up the priority list as well.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Freeman.
Just a couple of questions. I think you said that this rate increase includes, was it 115 or 119 million of new infrastructure? And I imagine there's a detailed list of that. How do we know that it gets built? You say we're going to spend 119 million, that's why we need this increase. How do we know in this 3-year on a schedule that those things got, at the end of 3 years, that you did spend it? So, I don't know how we know from last time, but is there some sort of accounting that maybe there's an outside agency, someone who checks, yeah, they spent 115, it's in the ground, those named improvements did get installed? Is there, just explain how that works.
So I can try that for you. But the California Public Utilities Commission, that is really what their task is, to hold us accountable and to make sure that after our infrastructure plan is approved, that we follow through and we complete all of that work. So we are accountable to them, and they do check back with us to make sure. They also come and tour the system, and that's one of the things that they ask to tour when they're here, is they want to see what got proposed in the last rate case and what got put in the ground, or what got installed. And so we do provide all of that information to them. They do audit that.
Second question, could we go over those rate increases again? There were 3 years. The first year, Ken, it was like
9-1.
9.1, the second year 5.9, and the last year 5.4. So, 20% over 3 years.
Yes.
Average is about, whatever that's, 6 3/4 or whatever. I guess it's only coincidence that we just heard we have 7.5% annual inflation. I mean, or maybe it isn't coincidence, maybe. But what did you see, before, I have a little trouble hearing someone, the average customer, I'll just think residential right now, but the average residential customer today, did you say pays $46 a month?
Yeah, so I've got kind of two numbers here to show you. We've got one where you can take, you take the average usage and the typical service charge, and you do a formula, and you say, and this is as per the
Well, I just
commission.
want the average right now, because if we get into
4602.
detail, it gets too confusing.
4602 is the current
just round
residential
numbers, let's
average,
just say
yes.
46.
Okay.
And it's like 4 to 450 is what you said, the 9%. Is that about right?
Yes.
So times 12 is $50, 56, what is it a year? The increase will be, so right now I spend, if I'm average, $550 a year, something like that.
Yeah, so you'd be looking at another roughly $50 per
Yeah, another
year
50,
in
okay.
year one,
Okay.
as council member
And,
or Vice Mayor Weir
And it'll
pointed
go up,
out.
but okay, so maybe it's kind of 600-ish a year, $50, 55, something like that would be the average person when we're done. So I'll pay over 3 years about $150 more, an extra 50 a year, 50, 60, something like that. Okay,
Correct.
okay. How does that compare to 2 or 3 what we could call peer cities? Let's say Stockton, Fresno, I don't know if I say it, just so give us perspective, what are they paying the average, again, household per month, per year? How do we compare?
So Visalia, I can speak to because I'm familiar with it, as is Tammy. And Stockton, I could probably look up, but I don't want to bog you down. So Visalia has a lower typical cost. I believe the average residential right now in Visalia is somewhere in the neighborhood of $36. Water costs are highly localized, though. What it has to do with is there's a single pressure zone in Visalia. So our power cost, our purchase power cost for operating the system in Visalia is markedly lower than it is here in Bakersfield, where you have how many pressure zones? 14 pressure zones. So we're moving water up and down.
Okay,
There's
how
more,
about
more cost.
one smaller city probably isn't enough for us
Yeah.
to get it.
I believe Stockton's in that
Art
same
Finello
neighborhood.
He has a lot of numbers often. Do you have any numbers of the typical Stockton or Sacramento or, other people? Just to help us out quickly here.
I don't have it available right now, Councilmember Freeman.
Yeah, come to the microphone for those people like me.
We've done some presentations in the past showing like our similar cities. I don't have that with me right now, but maybe I could look up something real quick and let you know.
Nobody remembers any of those numbers. It's just helpful for the rest of us to knowing, well, you're in the ballpark, or you're much cheaper, or you're a lot more. I just feel more comfortable when I know those
Right.
those things. I'm
let me
not
see-
saying that these aren't legitimate,
Right.
calculated, because
Yeah.
an independent body does check them, so we understand they didn't set the rate. This is what the commission said they could set it. So that does give us a check on reasonableness, which I understand.
Right.
The public likes to know, well, we pay $50 a month, what do they pay in LA, or what are they paying in, you know?
Yeah. Let me go back to my computer. I'll see if I can get something for you right away, Councilmember Freeman.
Councilmember Freeman, just
Okay,
if-
okay.
If I may interrupt real quick, if we can just compare Cal Water's rates with the city's municipal water rate.
Yeah, okay. So I have that with me for using the same average quantity that Cal Water did for a 5/8 meter. Cal Water's current rate is $46 per month. For the city, for the same size meter, the same amount of water, for the city's domestic system, we would be about $28.87. And so,
And the reason for that big a difference is the capital cost that they have to spend per year compared to, I mean, that's a big difference you would expect that would, since capital is the major portion of these and continues, always is that because we've had less capital costs in recent years, or we have a different pressure zone, or?
Yeah. Yes, our city's domestic system, we actually have one pressure zone. We do have, multiple storage tanks like Cal Water does, but we operate as a single pressure zone. They operate maybe 5 or 8 pressure zones, I believe. 14 pressure zones. We're also, I would say, in terms of water main replacements, our typical water mains are much newer than Cal Water's, especially in the downtown area. Our water mains tend to be a lot newer, so we don't have these. Just looking at the water main replacement program, we're not at that point in our life cycle yet with our newer domestic system to be replacing water mains. That would be one example.
Okay. Well, I know we have, it is I understand it's an apples to oranges, the totally different geographic conditions. Another question, if anyone knows the answer. In my prior life, company owned a utility company, a water company for a city, and we would periodically go for our rate increases because we had all sorts of big pipes to replace all the time. And many times they turned us down. They said, we're not going to give you any increase because your rates are too high to begin. We don't like it. So, well, so that was interesting. But I was told we were allowed a certain, by law, return on our investment as a public utility, or no one would ever build them or invest in them if we didn't allow them any return on their, makes sense. And I'm wondering if you know, as Kevin, right, that what is the allowed rate of return for your investments that I guess the California Utilities Commission allows you when they scrutinize your numbers?
Sure. So let me address that, and then I'll backtrack to Stockton because I do have typical bills. So our current rate of return as determined by the Public Utilities Commission is 7.48%.
7.4, okay.
And City of Stockton average bill currently is 5211
5211.
within our service area. City of Stockton, much like Bakersfield, is a split system. The city operates one portion. I keep looking at Mr. Clegg because I know he has a background in Stockton. City of Stockton operates one portion of the city, and we operate, much like here, the older portion of the city.
Okay, one final kind of general question. I think it follows up on Councilman Gonzalez's question. Do you do any sort of we're a big city of a big area of a lot of lines of pipe, hundreds of miles. Do you do any sort of scoping of, do you do like a 10-year rough estimate? This is about the capital needs we're going to have, because every year that one's going to be 99 years old, and we have to replace them. So, I mean, long-term projections are just projections, but do you have projections that will show this is about what will be typical in the future? Or, no, we've got a big one coming here, and you ought to know about it. We're going to need 300 million next time because all this stuff is really getting old or failed. Just so, is there anything coming down the road that will, in 3 years from now, surprise us? Or it'll be just kind of typical what we've, like this 3-year plan?
Well, let me, I want to put up one caveat out there, which is when it comes to regulatory control with things like water quality, like 123 TCP, sometimes there are known unknowns and there are unknown unknowns.
New regulations like they did to us,
Yeah.
was it the TCP or the 54 million out of nowhere that fell on us? That came from the state. I understand that.
But as far as capital needs, that's Tammy's area of expertise.
So a large percentage of the proposals that we put before the PUC are what we call programmatic. And so for the main replacement, that is a program. That is a program that we expect to do every single year. And with that, we do set long-term goals for those programs. So we look out much more than 10 years and say, okay, here's a list of, here's all the mains that we've identified, and we use information, we use data. We're constantly collecting leak data, and we analyze the mains based on age, the number of leaks, and so forth for replacement. And so we know going out many more rate cases, how many mains, which mains we are going to propose for replacement.
So,
and so
do you know or estimate 3 years from now, and you come in for another, I guess they're 3-year programs, if it'll be about similar, or is there is something big coming that, we don't know about
So
yet?
as far as mains, I would say we should be consistent. Flat to meters will be finished at the end of 2024. That was a 20-year program that will be completed. As I would say the next big step for us will be additional, we have one additional tank in this rate case. We will be looking at our wells, the life of our wells. So for any of the wells that fail, we'll be looking at utilizing hopefully the same properties that we own and trying to replace those groundwater wells. But we take that part really serious. That can be a costly expense. So we hope to spread those out over time. Treatment's going to be a big thing as regulations change. As you said, we don't know when that's going to happen.
We can't blame you for regulations you don't have any control over. That. Right. One of our jobs is to plan, and people look to us and say, well, why didn't you tell us about that we had a $500 million expense coming in 3 years and no one told us about it? So part of it is, that's why I'm asking is, you don't know of anything out of the ordinary 3 years. That's really all I want to know.
I don't.
Because stability for a city it's important.
It's important to me as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Vice Mayor.
So, when we talked last time, there was a certain account that Greg kept talking about. You're familiar with what I'm talking about? Okay, maybe you could explain that to the whole council.
I'm going to assume that we're talking about the water revenue adjustment mechanism.
Yeah, the whatever it takes to balance.
So, yes. So the water revenue, it's important to note the water revenue adjustment mechanism is not in this filing. Okay. There was, between the last filing and the new filing, there was a additional proceeding by the Public Utilities Commission, and one of the results of their decision in that case was not a rate case, it was a separate proceeding, and the water revenue adjustment mechanism and decoupling in general for Class A water utilities has been done away with. There is no water revenue adjustment mechanism in this filing. So when this current rate cycle expires, that mechanism also expires. That was a true-up cost. This is, it's been in practice for a long time across the nation now. It's not widely practiced in California with regard to water, but it is in power. The concept is the public and the state have taken an interest in trying to encourage consumers to use less of a necessary commodity, right? And so therefore, the people providing the service for that commodity have a perverse relationship with their revenue generation versus this public interest in declining, in driving down commodity sales. So the attempt was to decouple the revenue need from the sales element. And what happened, the way that unfolded and was instituted, is you project your sales and you generate your rates based on your projected sales. If your rates or your revenue comes in short, you didn't sell as much as projected, you are allowed to go back then and apply to the commission for a additional charge to true up the necessary revenue. No additional revenue, only the revenue that was approved. And you have to go back in a subsequent year in order to do that because you don't know what the sales are until the end of the year. Now, if you come in over, you go back and you give a credit to customers. And that was in place from 2008 and will end, that regime will end at the end of this current rate cycle. So that will be at the end of 2023.
Okay, thank you. I consider that good news.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I typically don't like to justify rate increases, but you, as I remember, did not have a rate increase when we had the TCP installations and you did all those new filters just like we did. Is that correct? You did not have a rate increase at that time?
That is correct. We received a settlement that paid for the
Right.
installation.
We also received a settlement,
Yes.
but we also
Yes.
increased rates at that time. And so I thank you for not increasing rates at that time. And since then, we have also increased rates because those filters now require more maintenance and
As well for us.
Right. And so I'm going to make the point that justifies somewhat your rate increase.
There is a percentage of that rate increase that will be set aside for replacing those filters, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. What accommodations are you making for low-income customers during this period?
There's actually two things that I'd like to highlight there. So we have what's called a customer assistance program, right? And so that is people who meet the requirement. If you, to make it simple, if you meet the requirements for the CARE program for power utility, you meet the requirement for the CAP program for water utility. It provides up to, I believe, 50% off on your monthly service charge. Or $48, whichever is. The other thing I want to highlight, which is really unique, and it's in direct response to the decoupling decision that happened during this interstitial time, is there is now what, for lack of a better term, I would call a lifeline rate. We were deeply concerned about losing the water revenue adjustment mechanism. We still think it was an incorrect decision. However, we had to play the cards that were dealt to us, and we were really, really concerned that what was going to happen is it drives up your per unit cost across all customer tiers. And not only does it inhibit our ability to promote conservation, it actually increases customer costs on the most vulnerable. So our response was to create a new tier one kind of lifeline rate so that the first 6 units of water are at a steeply reduced rates. So customers who are low volume users or in a low income situation can manage their consumptive behaviors in a way to really control that cost. So those are two things I think that are important to note. The CAP program existed before. It has been renamed. It was called LIRA before. But more importantly, I think, to highlight that lifeline rate, which we think is fairly innovative, although the Public Advocate's Office has issued their report, and they have taken issue with it.
Thank you. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. To what extent is Cal Water and the city of Bakersfield eligible for some of the state and federal grant funding programs that are available to fix up some of this infrastructure?
If you're speaking about the arrearages program, Is that what you're talking about, as about the past due arrearages, or are you talking about grants?
Well, I
in
mean it
general?
broadly, all the different funding streams that are coming through, including the recent infrastructure bill that Congress passed. You know, are there opportunities, and how do you prioritize which cities you target to apply for those grants?
So, do you want to?
Yeah, so let me, there's a little bit to unpack on that. So first I want to address the money that was cleared for arrearages. Before any of the money was cleared for arrearages, Cal Water itself took aside $400,000 and applied it statewide to pay off balances that had accrued during the early stages of the pandemic. Since then, we have been tirelessly working to make sure that our customers have access to the arrearage relief that's being funneled from the federal government through the state to make people able to pay arrearages that have accrued in direct result of the pandemic. And that money will be, customers will be notified relatively soon. I believe the notices are going out about the amounts of their back bills that are going to be paid off as per the requirements of that. There had been some efforts to limit availability of those funds for people who are served by investor-owned utilities, and we fought diligently for our customers to make sure that they could have access to those funds. With regard to grants and fundings that are available in the infrastructure bill, one thing that has been changed is a change to what's called CAIAC, the Contributions in Aid of Construction. When the tax reform bill of 2017 went through, there used to be an allowance for a developer to build a development, install the water system, and then turn that water system over to us for operation. What happened in 2017 was all of a sudden that became subject to administrative costs and taxes, which really made it difficult because we cannot take on new CAIAC development at the cost of existing ratepayers who are not benefiting from that. That has been changed now. So we can go back into, that allows us to do things like we've done up in Goshen and other places where an entity like the county or self-help enterprises, the community water center, can apply for a grant, receive the grant, construct a tie-in for consolidation, and then turn that over to us for expert operation without putting the burden of the taxes and administrative fees on our existing customers. The other thing is we are eligible for grants. It is difficult for an investor-owned utility to kind of navigate that world. However, we are starting to really look into that and develop a process for that in a way that we've not really addressed in the past. And we'd be happy to talk about that more, but it is kind of in the offing right now. It's a really new initiative for us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. I don't see any other requests to speak. I want to thank you for your support of our community. I see you so frequently supporting our nonprofits here, and you're very, very consistent now, so really appreciate that. Vice Mayor?
Motion to adjourn to closed session.
Receive and file.
Sorry.
Okay.
Motion to receive and file.
You have a motion to receive and file. Please cast your votes. Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson, Mr. McCusker.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Parlier absent.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn to closed session.
We're adjourned to closed session.